Tonight, millions of people will dream. They'll visit places that don't exist. They'll meet people they haven't seen in years. Some dreams will be so vivid, they'll remember them for the rest of their lives. But what if you've never seen anything? Not the sky, not another person's face, not even your own reflection. What happens when you dream? Most people think they already know the answer. You probably just see darkness. It sounds reasonable, but there's one problem. Darkness is still something you see. If someone has been completely blind since birth, they have no idea what darkness even looks like. So if they don't see darkness, what do they actually experience? The answer begins with a simple fact. Yes, blind people dream, just as often as everyone else. But here's where almost everyone gets it wrong. There's no single answer. Everything depends on one question. When did they lose their sight? That tiny detail changes everything. Someone born completely blind can experience dreams very differently from someone who lost their vision later in life. It's the difference between dreaming without ever seeing the world and dreaming after spending years looking at it. To understand why, we first need to step into the dreams of someone who has never seen a single image in their entire life, because those dreams may be nothing like the ones you're imagining. So let's start with someone who has been blind since birth. Imagine asking them to picture the color blue, or the shape of a rainbow. They can't, not because they're forgetting, but because they've never experienced those things in the first place. Their brain has nothing visual to recreate. So when they dream, it doesn't suddenly invent images. Instead, it builds the dream from everything they do know. A familiar voice calling their name, the rough texture of a wooden door, the warmth of sunlight on their skin, the smell of fresh rain, the feeling of running across soft grass. For someone born blind, those experiences can be just as vivid as a picture is to you. That also changes how they recognize people in dreams. You might recognize your best friend the moment you see their face. Someone born blind might recognize that same friend by the sound of their laugh, the way they speak, the feeling of a handshake, or even the scent of their perfume. In other words, their dreams aren't empty. They're simply built from different pieces. But then scientists noticed something that didn't fit this explanation at all. Some blind people described seeing faces, colors, even entire landscapes. How is that possible? If they can't see, the answer lies in one small detail we mentioned earlier. Not whether someone is blind, but when they became blind. Now let's go back to that question. Why do some blind people still dream in pictures? The answer is surprisingly simple. They weren't born blind. At some point in their life, they could see. That means their brain had already spent years collecting images, faces, colors, places, sunsets, the ocean. Thousands of visual memories were already stored away. And dreams love to borrow from memories. Think about your phone for a second. Imagine the camera suddenly stopped working. You couldn't take any new photos, but all the old ones would still be there. Your brain works in a similar way. When someone loses their sight later in life, the eyes may stop sending visual information, but the memories don't instantly disappear. That's why many people who became blind can still dream about people they've known, the streets they grew up on, their childhood home, even colors they haven't seen in years. But here's something fascinating. Those visual dreams don't always last forever. For some people, they slowly become less detailed over time. For others, they remain vivid for decades. Scientists are still trying to understand why, and that's what makes dreams so mysterious. Two people can both be blind, yet experience completely different dream worlds. One may dream almost entirely through sound and touch. The other may still see faces, places, and colors. Not because one brain works better than the other, but because each brain is working with a different set of memories. And that leads to an even bigger question. If dreams don't actually come from our eyes, then who or what is creating them in the first place? That answer completely changes the way we think about dreams. So if dreams don't come from our eyes, where do they come from? The answer is your brain. Think about the last dream you remember. Did your eyes actually see any of it? No, they were closed the entire time. Yet somehow, you still experienced an entire world. That's because your brain isn't watching a movie. It's creating one. It takes pieces from your memories, your emotions, your senses. Then, it stitches them together into a story. That's why dreams can feel so real. And that's also why someone born blind doesn't need vision to dream. Their brain simply uses different building blocks. Instead of colors, it might use voices. Instead of faces, it might use familiar footsteps. Instead of landscapes, it might use the feeling of walking through a familiar place. The dream is still complete. It's just built differently. In fact, this isn't unique to blind people. Even sighted people don't rely only on vision when they dream. Think about it. You've probably heard someone call your name in a dream, felt yourself falling, or even smelled smoke before waking up. Dreams have always used all of your senses. We just tend to remember the visual parts the most. Maybe that's why so many people assume dreams are only about seeing, but they're not. And there's one final question that most people never think to ask. If blind people dream differently, do they also have nightmares differently? The answer is yes, but probably not in the way you're imagining. For most of us, a nightmare is full of frightening images. A shadow in the hallway, a monster in the dark, a terrifying face. But if someone has never seen any of those things, their fear has a different shape. Imagine hearing footsteps getting closer, without knowing who's there, feeling completely lost in a place you know, reaching for help and finding no one. Those experiences can be just as terrifying as anything you could ever see. In fact, some studies suggest that people who are blind, especially those blind from birth, report more dreams involving getting lost, falling, or struggling through unfamiliar places. Researchers think this may reflect the real-world challenges they sometimes face, though experiences differ from person to person. And that's an important detail. There isn't one blind dream, just like there isn't one normal dream. Every person's dreams are shaped by their own life, their memories, their experiences, their emotions. Blindness doesn't erase dreams. It changes the language they're written in. And maybe that's the most fascinating part, because after everything we've learned, the real question was never, what do blind people see in their dreams? It was, can a dream feel completely real, even without sight? The answer seems to be yes, which means dreams were never simply about seeing. They've always been about experiencing. So, what do blind people actually see in their dreams? The most honest answer is, sometimes, nothing visual at all. But that doesn't mean there's nothing there. A dream isn't just a picture. It's a feeling, a conversation, a memory, a familiar voice, the warmth of someone's hand, the sound of waves crashing against the shore, the smell of rain just before it falls. For someone born blind, those experiences can be just as vivid as a sunset is to someone with sight. And, for someone who lost their vision later in life, dreams may still be filled with faces, colors, and places they haven't seen in years. So maybe we've been asking the wrong question all along. Instead of asking, what do blind people see in their dreams? Maybe we should ask, how does the brain create an experience that feels completely real? Because that's what dreams really are. Not movies, not photographs, experiences. And the human brain is remarkable enough to create those experiences. With sight, without sight, or with nothing more than memories and the senses that connect us to the world. The next time you wake up from a dream, take a moment to think about it. Was it the things you saw that made it feel real? Or was it the things you felt? Sometimes, the most vivid dreams aren't the ones we see. They're the ones we experience. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, consider subscribing for more fascinating questions about how the human mind and the world around us really work. Thanks for watching.